houses are not dead things. They are merely slow. This was the philosophy that Arthur, a structural engineer with a penchant for historical restoration, told himself whenever the floorboards of his newly acquired Victorian mansion groaned in the dead of night. He believed that timber had memory, that stone held temperature, and that the settling of a foundation was just the building shifting its weight to get comfortable. But Blackwood Manor was different. It didn't just settle, it adjusted. Arthur had bought the property for a steal, primarily because the previous 3 owners had abandoned it without listing it for sale, simply leaving their furniture and clothes behind and vanishing into the night. Arthur, a man of logic and blueprints, dismissed the local rumors of hauntings as superstitious nonsense. He saw only load-bearing walls, joists, and beams. He spent the first week mapping the house, creating a digital CAD model of every room, every corridor, and every crawl space. That was when the math stopped working. It started with the hallway on the 2nd floor. According to the external measurements of the house, the hallway should have been 20 feet long. Arthur measured it 3 times with his laser tape. Inside, it was 24 feet. 4 feet of space existed on the inside that did not exist on the outside. He checked his equipment, changed the batteries, and measured again. 24 feet? He went outside and measured the exterior wall. 20 feet? He sat on the floor of the hallway, staring at the far wall. Logic dictated that there was a hidden room, a thick partition, or a measurement error. But Arthur knew his numbers. The house was bigger on the inside than the outside. It was a spatial impossibility. That night, he couldn't sleep. He lay in the master bedroom, listening. Usually, old houses creak with the wind. Blackwood Manor creaked with a rhythm. Thump dash creak pause thump creak. It sounded like a heartbeat. It sounded like respiration. On the 3rd day, Arthur decided to cut into the wall of the hallway to find the extra 4 feet. He took a sledgehammer and a pry bar to the plaster. He expected to find lath and wood studs, perhaps a brick chimney breast that had been boarded over. He swung the hammer, shattering the plaster. Dust bloomed into the air, smelling not of dry rot or old paper, but of copper and musk. He peeled back the broken drywall. There were no wooden studs. There was no brick. Behind the plaster, the wall was warm to the touch. It was a gray, fibrous material, tough and slightly damp. Arthur touched it. It yielded under his finger, soft and rubbery, then sprang back. He shone his flashlight into the hole. The material was veined with thin blue lines that pulsed faintly. He wasn't looking at insulation. He was looking at tissue. Horror is a cold bucket of water, but curiosity is a fire that burns through it. Arthur convinced himself it was a fungus, some rare monolithic mold colony that had taken over the cavity of the wall. He went to the basement to check the foundation, theorizing that the moisture was coming from below. The basement was a labyrinth of stone and shadow. The air down there was thick, humid, and hot, far too hot for a subterranean level. As he walked toward the main support pillar, he stepped in something wet. He looked down. A thick, translucent fluid was seeping up through the cracks in the concrete floor. It wasn't water. It was viscous, sticky. He looked at the main pillar. It wasn't made of concrete. It was calcified bone. A massive femur-like structure that rose from the earth and branched out into the ceiling, supporting the weight of the house like a skeleton. The pipes running along the ceiling weren't copper. They were arteries, hardened and painted over by previous owners. But now, as the house woke up, the paint was cracking, revealing the pulsing red tubes underneath. Arthur scrambled backward, his mind fracturing. The house wasn't haunted. The house was biological. It was a colossal, dormant organism that had been shaped into a dwelling, and now it was waking up. He ran up the stairs, intending to leave, to get into his car and drive until the fuel ran out. But when he reached the front door, the handle was gone. The wood had grown over it. The grain of the oak door swirled and knotted, sealing the exit like a healing wound. He ran to the windows. They weren't glass anymore. They had clouded over, turning into hard, milky cataracts. He pounded on them, but they had the tensile strength of cartilage. He was trapped inside a stomach that was slowly realizing it had food. He retreated to the center of the living room. Brandishing the sledgehammer, the walls began to sweat. The wallpaper peeled back like dead skin, revealing the pink raw meat of the room. The floorboards softened, turning into a spongy tongue. The temperature rose rapidly. The rhythmic creaking he had heard earlier became a deafening thrum, the heartbeat of the structure accelerating. Arthur realized with a sick clarity why the hallway was longer. The house was taking a deep breath. It was expanding, and now it was ready to exhale. The ceiling above him split open, not with the crack of plaster, but with the wet tear of muscle separation. A fluid, acidic and burning, began to drip down. Arthur ran for the only place that seemed solid, the fireplace. He crawled into the hearth, hoping the chimney was still open to the sky. He looked up. The chimney was a throat, and it was swallowing. The brickwork rippled, peristaltic waves crushing downwards. He heard a voice then, not from a ghost, but from the house itself, a low, grinding vibration that shook his teeth in his skull. It was the sound of tectonic plates shifting, forming words. Assimilation, ... incomplete. A tendril of the gray fibrous material shot out from the living room floor, wrapping around Arthur's ankle. It didn't feel like a vine. It felt like a hand. He swung the hammer, crushing the tendril, which sprayed hot black blood across his face. He scrambled up the chimney, bracing his back and feet against the soot-stained throat. Climbing desperately toward the patch of gray light at the top, the house screamed. It was a sound of twisting metal and tearing wood, a roar of architectural agony. The chimney began to close in. The bricks softened, turning into crushing gums. Arthur squeezed through, his clothes tearing his skin, scraping raw against the calcified interior. He burst out of the chimney onto the roof, gasping for air, covered in slime and soot. He looked out at the world, the trees, the driveway, his car. Freedom was right there. He crawled to the edge of the roof to jump, but there was no edge. The roof didn't end. It curved downwards, seamlessly merging into the ground. There was no grass, no driveway. The ground outside was just more of the gray, fibrous skin. Arthur stood up, spinning around. The sky wasn't the sky. It was a high, vaulted ceiling made of bone-white ribs stretching miles above him. The sun was just a bioluminescent organ hanging in the center. He hadn't escaped the house. He hadn't even been in a house. He was deep, deep inside something much larger. The Victorian manor was just a small growth, a polyp, a decoy inside the belly of a leviathan that was the size of a city. As the realization broke his mind, the roof beneath his feet opened up like a mouth, and Arthur fell back in, screaming as he plummeted into the digestive dark, becoming just another calorie for the anatomy of the beast.